Hi gang, The Joy of Football kicks off this week with Martin and I talking three of the best people from Manchester City, Tottenham, Everton, Chelsea and a few others get a look in.
And we need to talk about, in another segment, Belgium, Barcelona and Newcastle and Fulham.
Letter from the Gantry, Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry looks back at the great days of Wolverhampton Wanderers, Billy Wright and the Beverley Sisters.
And Neil has a voice of passion about the difficulties for club managers in international breaks when their players come back all tired and no time for prep. It's an interesting one.
Stoppage time, yes, we've got stoppage time is about staying up late or just simply changing the clocks. Now, remember, if you like us, you can subscribe. If you want to get more involved, you can go on the Patreon. And of course, if you want to read us, we're on substack.com under The Joy of Football as well. Let's go.
The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks rush shot in! Rooney! Aguero!
The Joy of Football.
Hello, The Joy of Football podcast with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett. I mean, we love this, but we're hardly the Bex and Victoria of podcasting, are we? And we have different views about a lot of things.
You haven't been knighted yet, that's what you mean, isn't it? Yeah.
I never will be because I don't believe in it. Although I was offered a knighthood, actually.
Yes?
Yeah. Back in, I was offered a knighthood if I could get a photograph in 1997 when John Major was still Prime Minister of Tony Blair and Ruud Gullit together. I was offered a knighthood if I could do that. And my answer was, I don't believe in knighthoods. And the answer to that was, well, we'll give you one anyway if you can get it. I didn't get it. But not for want of trying. Rudy wouldn't do it.
Carry on, Sir Neil.
But my point is that we have differing views. So Martin doesn't mind the international breaks because he likes England. I hate them. We're on an international break. Let's start, therefore, with some good club football stories. This is three of the best.
And he makes them pay.
Three of the best. He's made them pay. And that completes a wonderful hat-trick.
Three of the best. Young player, old player, player. I've been very good this week. I've only got one of each.
That is very good. And I have broken what I put in as an unofficial rule. Since you talk about Chelsea all the time, I don't do it. But I have to this time because I saw Malo Gusto score his first goal in professional football. Clearly it's therefore his first goal for Chelsea, almost 100 games for the club. And if you have ever scored a goal, it's a wonderful feeling. Everybody knows that. And he's never had that feeling until he had that feeling. I must say, by the end of the game, it had worn off because we had some close-ups in the coverage. I was commentating on the game. But at the moment when it happened, it was a neat header and it was absolutely, I think, enjoyed probably more by the teammates. So they were all over him. And
it said a lot about Wolves. It was kind of halfway inside the 6-yard box, about 3 yards out.
It was, but nonetheless, he got there, and he delivered, and it was the first goal after a very, I think you described it, Neil, as the worst team in the league at the moment against the tiredest team in the league. Chelsea had been to back and back. But that changed in the second half, and he was actually the catalyst for that with his very first goal. So the man who plays with gusto, named Gusto, is my young player, and just to record how. Whether he'll now have an appetite for more, we'll see.
Well, he gets up and down, and Chelsea aren't playing the inverted fullback as much as they were, so he's more comfortable on the touchline up and down. I can't see him displacing Jules Koundé in the national team, but he seems to be number two.
Well, he's in the squad, isn't he?
Yeah. So well done to him. It's how regularly he can get into the Chelsea team with Reece James there, of course. But
Maresca likes him. That's been made quite clear.
Yeah. My young player is Jérémy Doku. I first came across Jérémy Doku during COVID 2020. Chelsea played Rennes in the Champions League. It was when I couldn't go to games. So I watched it on television. It was in the group stage. He started one game and came on in the other. He'd have been about 18 at the time. And he was a jack in the box. He was a real skillful, buzzing bee, but without product. And he was the kind of player that you stood back off, watched, and then took the ball away from him, candy from a baby. And I thought, oh, God, yeah, flash, but you're not going to make it, son. And when Manchester City bought him, I thought, nah. And this is his third season at Manchester
He's
City.
played around 100 games now, yeah.
He's 23, still only 23. Now, you know, I always argue that all my time working inside football clubs, it became obvious to me that most players stopped improving around the age of 21, apart from the truly world-class players who from 21 to 24 go vroom. And Doku's not done that till this season. And he's 23 and suddenly he's exploding. And the goal he got against Liverpool, I put up there with goal of the season. And never mind his part in it, the build-up was incredible because it came from City working their way out of the back. But his part in it was absolutely sensational. And I think when he played for Rennes, he was on the right wing. But he's now sort of found his place on the left wing. And I've often said to you, yeah, Jack Grealish had that really good year for City when they won the treble, but I don't feel as though they've ever found someone to replace the job that Raheem Sterling did before he kind of lost his way a little bit. And Doku's beginning to fulfill that role, get in the penalty area to finish off the crosses from the other side and to make his way into the penalty area. And I think Doku's arrived, and I'm beginning to believe that he could be another Manchester City great. And what he proves, if he does become that, is, again, sometimes it does take an awfully long time for players to settle at new clubs, and an especially long time for young players to settle at clubs. But he is certainly shining bright.
I've got two things to add to that. One, when he was 15, he was pursued with vigour by Liverpool, a team that he stunned with that goal. And he was given the real treatment. Met Jurgen Klopp, I believe, met people like Steven Gerrard as well. Everybody knew that he had that.
There's a touch of Diaz about him.
Yeah.
Liverpool have just lost. They could really do with him now.
Well, he said, I don't want to go. I want to go back. He went back to Anderlecht then before he went to Rennes. And as a young boy, maybe overwhelmed by the experience, but Liverpool were probably thinking, those who were still around from that time will have think, well, he could have been ours. And the other thing, Neil, which I really thought you would have mentioned, he has a sister called Chelsea.
Has he? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I love him even more. We're going to come back to Jérémy Doku a little later in the podcast, but we move from young player to ancient player, old player.
Well, I can't go any further than Pep Guardiola of the 1,000 games, what he called the perfect fixture for his 1,000th game, and of course it produced a perfect result for him and a very good performance, although he was, I think, quite critical of the latter stages of the game, but as he is always, he didn't sort of totally embrace it as, although he called it a dream fixture, that he didn't call it a dream performance, but it obviously was a very, very good performance. And what he's done in the time he's been in English football is astonishing. I mean, this is the era where managers last, if they last 8 months, they're doing very well, let alone 8 years plus. And the reinvention of teams, that also is a wonderful quality. His in-game skills are enormous as well, which is very much, I think, the dividing line between the good managers and the great managers, you know. And he, by this team now, has got a lot of fresh faces in it, and he's done it by, of course, the club can buy money, but taking someone like Nico O'Reilly, who obviously played a part in the performance and has a good understanding from a left-back position that he wasn't schooled to when he was coming through the very junior ranks at Manchester City. So he improves players. Sometimes the foreign players have to wait a while to understand his methods, and maybe Doku comes a little bit. Although I have seen Doku have some unforgettable moments in the first 2 years, really. I think he's always, as a commentator, you always want to keep an eye on a player like that because he could just do something that's perhaps elevating the game to a new level. So for Pep, it's a thank you, I think, from all the English fans that he stayed so long. I think in a very good interview with, I think, Guy Mowbray after the game that I saw, where he was sort of hinting about how much longer. Guy asked him a good question, how much, you're going to go 2,000 or whatever. And he said, well, I'll do the rest of the season. That was because he's excited by this now. And if it does look that Arsenal are certainly setting the pace, then at the moment it does as if you're Arsenal, the club you're worried about is Manchester City. And Mikel Arteta knows better than anybody what Pep Guardiola brings.
Do you go along with the belief that he's completely changed with Donnarumma and Haaland at both ends of the pitch, and it's a different City in style?
Well, yeah, I mean, Donnarumma is a different kind of goalkeeper to the kind of goalkeeper he's been. Of course, he's a goalkeeper of great international repute for the size of him making so. I did think they were a bit unlucky, Liverpool, with the disallowed goal.
Yeah, they were.
I have to say, but I think had the goal been given, then
City would have been a bit unlucky.
No, but it wouldn't have been overturned, I don't think.
No, I agree.
So it was one of those where it couldn't have been cast as a clear and obvious error for VAR to intervene. And that I'm talking about that because Donnarumma was the goalkeeper who couldn't quite get to it. But the type of football changes. In a game, it'll change, and it was one of the stranger headers. I think it's almost as if the ball was headed onto him. I don't think it was quite, but he was sort of up there. I'll get to it, and then it drops the net. And of course, he did miss a penalty. He's done that before, and the greats miss penalties. Leo Messi's penalty record isn't very good in truth. No. So now listen, it's a great landmark. We all know the impact he has. Any podcast we could have talked about him, and to make it around 1,000 and have that win and look as relaxed after a game as we've seen him for a while.
And it's always worth reminding ourselves that he won the Champions League with Barcelona. Well, it was actually the European Cup. It's the last season of the European Cup. I think 92 he won with Johan Cruyff as his manager.
It started with Barcelona B, didn't it? I think that 1,000. And he did say in that interview that he's never forgotten the players who played in that first game for him. But it wasn't quite at the same level as the game 1,000. So, yeah, well done, Pep.
My old player is my old mate, Gianluca Vialli. And the reason it's Vialli is because of a really poor game. Everton 2, Fulham 0. And Barry, their summer signing, what's his first name?
Tierney.
Yeah. Barry came off and got the most incredible reception from the Hill Dickinson home crowd because of the effort that he put in and because of the drive that he offered the team. But he can't score a goal. Back in
he had one disallowed, we should mention. Correctly disallowed. Yeah.
Back in 1996, when Vialli, at the age of 33, I think, was signed by Chelsea from Juventus, and soon 18 months later, became player manager. He told me that one of the biggest differences between Serie A and the Premier League was that if you were a big money signing as a forward, in Serie A, you had to score goals. And if you played crap, it didn't matter one iota. You just had to score goals. And if you scored goals, the crowd loved you. And it didn't matter if you didn't try at all. But if you worked your nuts off and didn't score goals, you were a flop of the biggest order, and they would turn against you. And it is the exact opposite in the Premier League. If you are a big signing and you score goals and you don't show effort, you don't show passion for the game, you don't do anything except score goals, they don't fall in love with you.
Well, give me an example of a play like that then. Somebody who scores goals and doesn't have any passion in his play, doesn't charge around the pitch.
I'm thinking of laconic goal scorers who don't get involved in the game, which probably now there aren't any, but in 1997, when Luca was saying this, there'd have been more. But now you've got to spend 90 minutes pressing and 90 minutes working your nuts off, or you don't get in the team. But his point was that if you made that effort and didn't score goals, so if you were Sesko or somebody like that,
he scored a few,
or Barry,
he scored some.
They love you.
Barry hasn't scored any.
No, they love you. But if you score and you don't show that effort, they don't fall in love with you at all. And I think that is an element of the English game, the English league game, that is a positive in a way.
I suppose so. I mean, to be honest, I have said this before in the podcast. As a commentator, you look at the team and say, well, who's going to score goals in this team? And it might not be the person who's playing furthest forward, but it might be. I mean, with Everton, they've got Michael Keane and Tarkowski, who are a real threat at every set piece, and others. So you can say, well, if they get us 15, 18 goals a season, maybe that's asking a bit too much, but that sets you on your way, and it means every corner that you take in the whole season, if they're playing and Tarkowski always plays, then you're feeding him, really, aren't you? So I was thinking when that result came through, I wonder how many games David Moyes has won 2-0. We used to think of Mourinho, that was Mourinho's score at 2-0, he almost shut up the shop, particularly in his first spell, I think, yeah. And it's a clean sheet and a little bit of comfort in the mind, although the second goal was from Michael Keane, wasn't it? It came very, very late. So there was no comfort really in the game. That's, I think, the coaches have to look at that and say, well, I get something from him, I get something from him. I mean, you had Nicholas Jackson, who was a may or may not centre forward, who did probably get enough in the end, but was more criticised for not scoring than he was praised for scoring. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
So as long as the team delivers, I would have thought that would have been the same for. But Gianluca was a goal scorer himself, and he's also I think the strongest person in football I've ever hugged. We are in a huggy culture now, so there's a lot of hugs. But it was like hugging a block of iron. Unbelievable frame. And what a lovely man, and how tragic it was he was taken from us so young.
Yeah. Player.
Yeah, I've gone Mickey van der Ven because of the goal, I think, against Copenhagen, which that was also, can we say Roy of the Rovers still? Do people know what I'm talking about by saying that? A complete solo, take them all on, best kid in the playground goal, gets the ball at the edge of his own penalty area and just blitzes his way through. And then there was a player up with him. And I thought there must have been a point where maybe the player up with him thought he was going to would probably be a tap in.
I mean, to be fair, he beat a lot of people around the halfway line on the way.
He just ran past them, it was a complete sprint speed. And that's why, of course, all the Tottenham fans worry about his hamstring, and the Tottenham medical staff do as well. But he's putting together a run of results. He scored half a dozen goals this season. And he did make maybe the challenge of that particular weekend on Sesko, the aforementioned, and that actually it left Sesko injured and had to go off the game when it seemed certain that he was a substitute, Benjamin, that he was going to score for Manchester United. And it was a ridiculous, he was clear, and he must have known he was clear. And I would love to ask him, how shocked he was that the challenge came in, because I can't imagine pretty much any other defender getting to him the way that Van der Ven. So I'd also like to know what his role was on the equaliser for Manchester United when De Ligt scored at the far post. I've had a look at it. I don't think you can pinpoint the fact the goal was conceded. Maybe the goalkeeper more than anybody else, because he sort of poured it into the net, but it was close range. So defending has not been so great for Spurs, but when he plays, and they have a proper defender alongside him in Romero, who knows all the arts, the dark ones and the good ones. So I think they're a great pair.
But he went off injured.
Yeah, well,
He's had a lot of
they
injuries.
haven't had that pair together enough, and that would have harmed Ange Postecoglou, and it might harm Thomas Frank. But he's had apart from the disappointment of that equaliser for Man United from the Spurs point of view, from Van der Ven's point of view, he's had a pretty good season.
Yeah, attacking season.
Yeah,
My player, I'm sticking with going back to Everton really, and Dewsbury-Hall, who had a year at Chelsea, and of course was a Leicester boy, and he's had to struggle really, because Leicester got relegated. Then they got promoted, and he was an outstanding player in the Championship. Under Maresca. Yeah. And when he got a transfer to Chelsea, when Maresca came, I was really against him. I've got to admit. I just thought, teacher's pet, daddy's son and all that. And he came, and he wasn't physically a Premier League player. He wasn't strong enough, and he wasn't fast enough. But as the season wore on, and he was playing UEFA conference games and all the Carabao Cup and FA Cup games, I began to warm to him. And what changed me was that he was clearly a very intelligent player. He took up really good positions. He wasn't technically brilliant, but he had enough technique to take advantage of those positions on a number of occasions. But he saw things. And he picked out players who were in good positions when he was on the ball. He scored a few goals, and he was also somebody who had a mouth and would have his say and would help players along and understand what was better. He was a bit of a leader, and if you look back at the actual UEFA Conference final, Caicedo made it 4-1, got the fourth goal. But he, in the run-up, in the build-up to that, Dewsbury-Hall, made a magnificent run off the ball that completely opened Real Betis up. And I just, at the end of the season, I thought, yeah, you know what, I quite like you. And he did something during the season that completely blew my mind away. And this would have been about October, November. And Chelsea played a conference game away, and he was interviewed on the pitch live on television at the end. And he said, when asked about their targets within the UEFA conference, and he said, well, we can't muck about. Looking at the opposition in this tournament and the amount of money this club spent, if we don't win it, it's a failure. Who says that now?
Maybe that's why he was sold.
And he was the first person. He was the first person to come out and say, "We welcome this pressure." He didn't say it as in a way of putting pressure on. It was, "We welcome this pressure," and I thought that he became somebody who you'd look at him and say, "We'd like him in our dressing room." And Everton took a chance on him because he hadn't established himself in the Premier League, and he is now playing number 10 in a 4-2-3-1, and he is a bright light in David Moyes' side. And he is proving that he is a thinking Premier League quality player, and I'm delighted.
Well, he hasn't had it easy. He had to work really hard to get into Leicester's team.
Yeah, he didn't get into it.
He was loaned hither and thither, and when he got in, I remember doing a game where maybe his second or third game, saying, well, here's somebody who's shown a lot of patience. And it was almost like, we champion the underdog, don't we, naturally? And he was an underdog. And he's not quite become top dog, but he's getting there. And if the progression continues, and maybe he's suited better to being Everton's a big club, But Chelsea, with all the players, you're fighting to get a game in the Premier League. With Everton, he's going to play, and he's making the most of it.
Yeah, there was talk when he left Chelsea, when he arrived at Chelsea, that we were swapping stately homes because we sold Lewis Hall to Newcastle and got Kin and Dewsbury-Hall in at Chelsea. Yeah. 3 of the best. Don't forget, if you enjoy this podcast, subscribe. If you don't, go away. Next up, we need to talk about. And there's a lot of things we need to talk about. And the first thing we need to talk about, Martin, is Belgium in this international break. And we never talk about Belgium like we talk about the Netherlands and Portugal and Croatia, these smallish countries who keep producing players.
Portugal, in fact, we talk about them.
We talk about Portugal and
but they're in the same envelope.
Belgium are just under 12 million, their population. And Trossard, who I thought should have played the last World Cup Euros last Euros, rather than Eden Hazard, who by that time was already waddling around and not being very influential. And Trossard, who scored such a goal against Sunderland for Arsenal. And every time I watch, I've seen Trossard play centre forward. I've seen him play both wings, and he just brings something to the team. He's often a better sub than he is a starter. I understand.
I'm sure he would disagree with that.
But Trossard, what a player he is. Doku, what a player he is. And
actually, they play in the same position, which is a bit of a problem for the management. Rudy Garcia is manager of Belgium, I think. He's got to try and sort that one out. But as you said, Doku can play on that. I mean, we forget Trossard scored a hat-trick for Brighton at Anfield, and that alone is a one-game statement.
In a game they lost 4-3, didn't they?
I can't remember.
I think they did. Yeah. But I mean, Belgium. You look back at the.
I think it was 3-3, wasn't it?
Was it? You look back at the.
Get Michael to check it out.
You look back at the Courtois. Meunier's still playing, who I thought in 2018 was arguably the best right back in the world. De Bruyne, Hazard, Lukaku, and they just, and so many others, and they just seem to be coming again. I mean, Courtois is still there.
But they were criticised, like England have been criticised, for a golden generation of players who didn't actually win anything, but came very close indeed. I've just looked at their squad for the November internationals. De Bruyne's injured and Courtois is injured.
Pulled out,
but before, this was with Courtois in it, so it might change. Of the squad of 26, 12 are 24 or under, which is a high proportion. Probably England would be something similar. But they've got Lamance in goal, of course, and Matt Sells, who play in the Premier League. And one who's making his way into the Belgium setup at Brighton now, Maxime de Kuyper. He's 14 caps, he scored 4 goals, and he's a left back.
Oh, no. Scored against Chelsea in that 3-1 win at Stamford Bridge.
So they, Anana at Villa.
Who's still only 24.
Yeah, he's one of my in my list. So it is remarkable. I mean, I think sometimes the smaller the country, the easier it is to, if you like, nationalise the youth system so that they identify the talent. And sometimes we're swamped by so many young players, the best ones, and Doku, as we mentioned in the earlier section, at 15, people at Liverpool wanted to sign him, so he'd had that opportunity to be in the spotlight. And I think maybe the good ones get a better opportunity to be very good because they perhaps get a little bit more individual attention. That's just a off the top of the head remark. But they certainly punch above their weight in terms of talent producing. And as a national team, well, we'll see. It's such an open World Cup.
You must have commentated on them in the old days when they had a good team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jean-Marie Pfaffengold, they got to the final of the Euros in 1980, lost to Horst Rubesch for West Germany, as it was then. Beat them in the final, which was staged in Italy, if I remember rightly. and they had a real lot of characters. I was billeted in the same hotel as them, and they'd be around the pool, and they'd be around the bar sometimes. Great midfield player Wilfried van Moor and Kurlemans and people like that. Enzo Schifo. They had a lot of good players then, and Paul van Himst. Yeah, it was. It's not just this lot. That's the point we're making, that there is a tradition of it, and I'm sure they'll continue.
We need to talk about Barcelona. Barcelona are second in La Liga in this international break. 3 points behind Real Madrid, of course, beat them at the Bernabeu in the first El Clasico. Second in La Liga. They've scored the most goals. They've conceded the second most goals. Only Valencia have conceded more goals than them. Their first away game of the season in La Liga, they kept a clean sheet at Real Mallorca. Since then, this has been their away games. They conceded 2 at Levante, 1 at Rayo Vallecano, 1 at Newcastle in the Champions League, 1 at Real Oviedo in La Liga, 4 at Sevilla in La Liga in a 4-1 defeat, 2 at Real Madrid, 3 in the Champions League at Club Brugge, a 3-3 draw, and this last weekend 2 at Celta Vigo, but they won 4-2. Barcelona can't defend, and are the best flipping attacking side in the world.
Yeah. But they seem to get. I mean, that 4-1 defeat was a big shock, wasn't it?
Yeah, but they've got Lewandowski not playing as much. They've got Rafinha.
He scored a hat-trick at the weekend.
Yeah, but they've got Rafinha sometimes at centre forward. They've got Ferran Torres. They've got Fer Lopez. And they've got obviously Lamine Yamal.
Well,
and they've got some
enough.
guy. They got some guy called Marcus Rashford now.
Yeah. Lamine Yamal just continues to defy description. Basically, he's just. If there is going to be another Messi, it'll be him. But could I dare even say he could be better than Messi? That's a bit of a label to pin on somebody, isn't it? But he might well be up there with the same sort of, he scores goals, he makes the game look ridiculously easy, and he's a baby. So how on earth is this happening? It's part of the joys that football occasionally, generational talent, I think, is the way it's described these days. So, yeah, I mean, you wanted to put Barcelona in. Well, I don't think we need to talk about them. I think we need to watch them.
Yeah,
to be honest, because
I agree.
It's the joy of football.
Well, they seem to come together towards the end of last season, and although they lost the semi-final of the Champions League to Inter Milan, the 2 games, but the 2 best games I think I probably saw last season on television, and I just think they look again as though they are the world's great entertainers, but they can't defend. They just can't defend.
How often do we say that?
High line, Hansi Flick. 2 more teams we need to talk about. We need to talk about Newcastle.
Yes, an intriguing one, isn't it? Very intriguing. And I bow to no one in my admiration of Eddie Howe and what he's done in management and the way he goes about his business. But he's a bit perplexed, I'm sure. I mean, they've got 9 points from 4 Champions League games and just 12 points from 11 Premier League games. So.
And again, they've got an away problem. Their first 3 games away this season were all 0-0 draws at Aston Villa, Leeds and Bournemouth. And since then, it's been horrendous. Then they went to Union St Gilloise in the Champions League and won 4-0. But since then, it's been horrendous. They lost 2-1 at Brighton. 3-1 at West Ham, 3-1 at Brentford, and they're just...
9 Premier League away games without a win, I think it is. I saw the Brighton game, I was there. They pulled it back to 1-1 with the Voltemade scored a very clever goal. And with 10 and 15 minutes to go, they were certain to win it. They were the only team in it, and they lost. And those sort of margins. And they were in front at West Ham, and they were in front at Brentford, and they've conceded 3 goals when they had a 1-0 lead. So, I mean, that is, if it wasn't Newcastle, you'd be thinking, my goodness, there's some warning signs in there. But I do think that You know, the players, the summer was dreadful for them, wasn't it? I mean, the whole Isak business just, I suppose, cast a big shadow across the place.
And we don't know, we have no idea who was responsible for the breakdown in relations, whether it was the player, whether it was a sporting director, whether it was a board member. Unlikely to be Eddie Howe, because it was clearly over contractual talks. And we just don't know what happened. But it was ludicrous. It was absolutely ludicrous.
But knowing this was likely to happen, I suppose they were hanging on that it might happen, but they went for Brian Mbeumo, João Pedro, Ekitike and Šeško, and they didn't get any of them. And, you know, they're all making their mark at other clubs. So and I think that when you look at that, that must be careless to let, you should catch one of those.
Yeah, and if we look at goals scored in the Premier League this season after 11 games, lowest Wolves 11, on 10 Forest and Leeds, and also and on 11 Newcastle. So they're fourth lowest goal scorers, and that's what's killing them.
Well, it's also, I mean, there is a slightly aging look about the defence. I mean, Dan Burn is one of the great stories of the last decade, really, of how he's gone from, I don't know, working in a supermarket or something like playing for Darlington and ending up playing for England and giving heart and soul to Newcastle United and coming back to his roots. It's a great story. But he's been forced to play at left back, which he did a lot at Brighton, of course, but hasn't really been needed to do at Newcastle as much. And you just wonder about how the defensive organisation, Kieran Trippier is now, he's an ageing talent. He's still a talent and still a great character at the club and a big voice in the dressing room. But maybe there's a loyalty in there that's gone on a little bit too long.
Yeah, and I also think...
I don't mean just with Kieran, but with a number of players. The midfield is the key, and Joe Linton's just having a bit of a bad patch at the moment, I think. Tonali is suggesting, I don't always believe the quotes that I see, but that he might be not averse to a move, that Isak sort of opened his eyes to the potential of elsewhere, and that would be terrible because Newcastle have really helped him in unusually difficult circumstances. Guimaraes seems absolutely driven and committed to the cause. He gives absolutely everything, and they've got some talented attacking players, but they not having Visser. They got Visser, didn't they? Wisser, and he
hasn't been fit.
He hasn't played a game. So.
I mean, there are wingers who become great forwards, and of course, Cristiano Ronaldo is the greatest example
Thierry Henry
of that. Yeah. But in Newcastle's case, Anthony Gordon is a winger. He's not centre forward, and they've been playing people at centre forward.
But we had a conversation last week about England centre forwards, and now it seems that Anthony Gordon's in this particular squad. Is going because they've given Ollie Watkins a chance to rest some minor injury he's been suffering with, but he needs a rest. And the talk is that, well, we can always play Anthony Gordon through the middle. So it is seen as an option.
Yeah. I saw him thrown in at centre forward at Everton on the first day of the season. This would have been 2021. I don't think he'd ever played centre forward before, and I concluded after that game that you should never play it again, and nothing's ever made me change my mind.
And he has, and of course it does allow Newcastle to get Harvey Barnes in the team.
Yeah.
But who's a good player and scored a very good goal at Brentford. So it does. Last time they were in Europe in the Champions League, it did have some impact, didn't it? And I know we're going to talk about this later, but you don't quite have the time to prepare your team that detailed coaches, and Eddie Howe, certainly one of those, would like to do.
Who is the manager who struggles most with that?
Antonio Conte.
Correct. More of that later. We need to talk about Fulham, who have suddenly slid down the table, gone on a not good run at all. 15th. They've only got 12 goals. But they keep scoring first and losing.
They had a bad summer as well, and it didn't seem there was a great will to invest in a team. The official line out of Fulham was, from the board, was, well, we've had our best season last season, and all sorts of new numbers met in terms of goals and positions and points. So why do we need to change it? So they really didn't change it, apart from a free transfer goalkeeper to back up Bernd Leno during the, and then in the last few hours, they brought in 3 players, with none of whom have any Premier League experience, and only one of whom, Kevin from Shakhtar Donetsk, the Brazilian winger, has had any real minutes. The other 2 are on loan, one from Milan and one from Bayern. So I feel sorry for Marco Silva, because actually the day before the transfer window closed, I saw him and I said, "You're going to do some work tomorrow?" He said, "I hope so." And then he clearly indicated that he hadn't been happy. Somehow the ground seems to have taken over the team, if you see what I mean. The ground is now so super. But
it's not filling up because the most expensive tickets are too expensive and people aren't buying them.
Well, they won't buy them if the team is still struggling. I mean, there've been some, and I thought Emile Smith-Rowe would be a great signing, but he hasn't quite pulled up the trees people expected. No. He cost a lot of money, and he's not a regular in the team. And the team looks very much like it did last season, which is obviously what the board said. Oh, well, if you can do it once, you can do it twice, but you can't. It doesn't really work like that.
I mean, I think when he left 18 months ago, whenever Tim Ream was a big loss. But
Anthony Robinson, we should mention.
Yeah, I was going to say Bassi came in, but now Robinson's missing on the left back.
Anthony Robinson, who I thought was a really improved player last year and was integral to the way they did so well. He's hardly kicked a ball this season, so that's
and again, the scoring of goals is such a problem for Wolves, for Leeds, for Fulham, for Newcastle. The scoring of goals is such a problem, and you look at their players and you can't really see many goals.
Rodrigo Muniz hasn't played much, and he is the senior striker, even although Raul Jimenez is still giving it his best shot, you know. But I think Muniz is stronger, younger, and he's got a future, whereas Jimenez has had a wonderful career and maybe coming towards the end of it. He'll hate me for saying that.
Yeah. Okay, that's what we need to talk about, and now we can get on with what we just want to talk about, and nothing better to listen to than Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry.
Letter from the Gantry.
Thanks, Neil, as always, for the intro. I've seen the last 2 Wolverhampton Wanderers Premier League matches leading up to the November international break, both 3-0 defeats in southwest London at Fulham and then Chelsea. I was at what turned out to be Vitor Pereira's final post-match press conference at Craven Cottage, and he seemed a broken man. Now, Wolves are a great club, a founder member of the Football League. There have been dark times before. They were in the old 4th division for a spell in the mid-1980s, and now they're in a mess of their own making. It's a sad situation. Falling in love with football as I did in the 1950s, it was impossible not to be impressed by the then might of Wolverhampton Wanderers, champions of England in 1954, 1958 and 1959, and several near misses in between, FA Cup winners in 1960. The Black Country Club was also well ahead of the times when in 1953 it installed floodlights at Molineux. This paved the way for a series of prestigious midweek friendlies, which many, including myself, believe pointed the pathway to the European club competitions we enjoy so much today. Talented teams from major footballing nations of the era like Hungary's Honvéd and Red Banner, Soviet-stellar teams from Moscow, Spartak and Dinamo were also on the guest list. Racing Club and San Lorenzo travelled to play at Wolverhampton from Argentina. And on October the 17th, 1957, Wolves even entertained Real Madrid, by then already winners of the first 2 editions of the new European Cup. These initiatives at Molineux were heightened by a number of the games being shown live on national television. With only the FA Cup final and the occasional England game being broadcast in full, this was an amazing bonus. I was one of the enthralled viewers. It was like watching creatures from another planet. Molineux was always packed, just under 55,000 for the Honved fixture, and Wolves never lost in this unique set of special events. Even Real Madrid's reputation took a knock, beaten 3-2 despite fielding their European Cup stars like Di Stefano, Hento and Copa. At the heart of the Wolves story was Billy Wright, captain of club and country, William Ambrose Wright, CBE, 105 caps and a true gentleman of the game, a national treasure. He also set a trend still sometimes seen today of marrying a show business star, in his case Joy, one of the three Beverley sisters, the Spice Girls of their day. Billy later managed Arsenal and had other roles in football, but then moved into television in increasingly senior positions with the Birmingham-based ATV, now renamed Central. It was a pleasure to get to know him and discuss his great playing days, though he was extremely modest. At the 1982 World Cup in Spain, he was my boss, officially the chef de mission. And when I was given the biggest assignment of my then fledgling career, it was Billy Wright, no less, who broke the news. ITV's number one commentator at the time and for many years before and after was Brian Moore, but he was also a brilliant studio host and indispensable for the daily programming schedule, particularly in the early weeks of a tournament. The plan was for Brian to leave the London base and come out to Spain to commentate on one of the semis and the final. But on the Monday of the last week of the tournament, Brazil, in those days branded as everyone's favourite second team, were knocked out in the afternoon by Italy, a famous hat-trick from Paolo Rossi. In the evening, England went too. I commentated for ITV in Madrid on a goalless draw against the host nation Spain, which saw both countries eliminated. It was a tournament, remember, with a second group phase rather than the conventional quarterfinals. Without England and Brazil in the last four, it was decided that Brian should stay in London to continue his excellent hosting of the ITV panel of pundits, in which the late Jimmy Greaves was playing a starring role. So the roster for the commentators had to be rearranged. 4 games left, 2 semis, the third place playoff, and the final. 4 commentators in Spain. We were told we would each get a game, but not which one. On the Tuesday morning, I went to say farewell to the England squad as they left their hotel for the airport and thanked them for their considerable help. I'd covered all their 5 games. Perversely, they went out of the competition unbeaten. The ITV base was just across the road. I found on my return that with the upcoming semi-finals being in Barcelona and Seville, our squad was also decamping. Like everyone else, Billy Wright was packing, and in a hurry. There was no time for a proper chat. "Oh, you don't have to rush, you're staying here," he almost blurted out as he was piling clothes into his suitcase. "You're doing the final." I couldn't catch my breath. It was a great game too. Italy 3, West Germany 1. Rossi scored the opener, and I wasn't sure, but his celebration had become a trademark, and I went with it. Though I was only 36, it turned out to be my only World Cup final for British television. Brian did come out to Mexico for the final 4 years later, but from 1990 until 2022, I have been blessed with broadcasting the game's ultimate showpiece, mostly for Australia and once for the USA. But to be given the nod in 1982, even in that cursory way, by the great Billy Wright, wow, I can still see it now. So maybe you can understand why I wish Wolves well. I hope that this is their darkest hour and that a dawn maybe with a shade of old gold, is on their horizon.
If you want to read Martin's letters from the Gantry, they are available in publication on our The Joy of Football Substack.com site. Just go on Substack.com and put in The Joy of Football and you'll find Martin's letters and my rants. Billy Wright would have earned a lot less money than Joy Beverley in the 50s and 60s, I would imagine.
I would imagine too, yeah. But they were a very happy couple.
Yeah.
And I think it was a case of opposites attracting, because Joy Beverley and the Beverley sisters were very outgoing. I did meet Joy a couple of times in Billy's company. And Billy was very understated, unassuming.
And he was a centre half.
Yeah.
And he was only about 5'10", wasn't he? She was taller than him.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. He wasn't there. That's why I think he was so revered, because he wasn't built in the conventional way of defending. But he had some mobility about his defending. And he was in a great team. And the Wolves through the 50s were, they are what the youngest of our followers would see in Manchester City and Liverpool and Arsenal. I mean, Wolves were right in the thick of it. And they're now, I think it's their 8th consecutive season in the Premier League. So, as I say, they've had some desperate times in the past and nearly went out of business, and the ground was left, without any great upgrading on it for a period. But there's still time. I think there's still time for them to do it.
When you look at a manager, you want energy, you want passion, you want belief. When you looked at Vitor Pereira, who's no longer their manager, or even worse, Juricic at Southampton last season, you got the most bloody miserable...
No, you're wrong, Neil. Because Vitor Pereira, they won 6 games in a row.
And he went down the pub.
Yeah, and he was dancing and going to the fans. And even, I mean, you were there for what was his penultimate game, I guess, the game against Chelsea, the League Cup game. Yeah. And they gave a pretty heroic second half performance, and he was full of joy. I think that was part of his impact. But they won, and he did mention in this last press conference, but I won 6 games in a row, 6 Premier League games in a row, which finished towards the end of April, and they haven't won a game since. I think it's 15 now, in which they've got 2 points this season, 3 points. 3 points out of 45, I think. Forgive me if my maths is not quite right. I mean, so the change from that would take the wind out of everybody's sails. To be honest.
They've not only got rid of their best players down the years, they've got rid of their best managers as well, and it's a sorry club. Yeah, but Billy Wright, there's a statue obviously of him outside the ground, and of Stan Cullis, the manager of that era, and that was their era. But it is,
it was very direct, forceful football. English football got a lot of good results against foreign teams, even going into the 60s, because of the aggression and the get the ball up to the front play. I mean, Spurs, the double winners, went into Europe, and first they won the Cup Winners' Cup, and then the first English team to win a European trophy. And Bobby Smith used to the big centre. Well, he wasn't so tall, but he was chunky. Yeah. And he terrorised the rather more delicate centre-backs from around Europe.
He was a hard man, Bobby Smith.
He was a hard man.
I knew him in his latter years because he was a Chelsea boy at the beginning.
He did, before he went to Spurs. He played for Chelsea.
I knew, he was a hard man. I mean,
a Yorkshire
good man, In 1990, of course, a Wolves player went to the World Cup with England, Steve Bull. In the last World Cup, Conor Cody went when he was still at Wolves. I mean, they have. They're a big.
It's quite a few go to World Cups with Portugal. I think
Wolves. All the best to Wolves.
Yeah, that's the message, really. Well, not that message from Neil, but those who are only listening didn't see it, so I can only apologise to my colleague. But he likes to have the last gesture.
At least it was one that we can show.
Just.
It is time for Voice of Passion.
Voice of Passion.
Followed, of course, by the Voice of Reason. I want to take you back to the first era of Jose Mourinho at my Chelsea, 2004 to 2007, because that is the first time that I remember a regular complaint by managers. He led it, but a lot of managers were doing it, about the first weekend of club football after international breaks. I don't ever remember, and I've been working inside Chelsea for quite a while then, any other manager doing it beforehand. And I think there were 2 reasons. I think in that era, 2004 to 2007, it's when the Premier League players became global. I think up till then they were mostly British. So each club would have had a handful of players going away, and Manchester United's and Arsenal's would have had more than a handful. But if anyone remembers back to those days when there were more friendlies because there weren't Nations Leagues and there weren't so many qualifiers, if there was ever a friendly, Fergie would never let a Manchester United player go if he could possibly help it.
Liverpool likewise.
So I think there weren't so many players going, and of course they weren't so global. Now there's so many South Americans and so many Africans, so they're going to all further distances, parts of the world, and getting back later. And as a result of that, FIFA have actually made the second international, the international break, a day earlier, so that the players can get back. But if they're in South America or in Asia or somewhere, they're going to take a long time to get home, and it doesn't make that much of a difference. The other reason I think you didn't hear complaints before was that training sessions weren't built to be specific for the next game. You work on defending one day, you'd work on attacking one day, you'd work on technique one day, and you probably only have one day on tactics. And that was your 4 days of preparation if you didn't have a midweek game, and you'd have Wednesday off. It was a different preparation. And now every single training session was in some way a preparation for the game, that you do this when you got the ball, you do that when you got the ball. And if you were coming back from internationals, you weren't able to prepare a game as a coach in the way that you wanted to. And now I'm looking at this break, and I'm looking at the fixture list for when the teams come back, and I can just see all the managers complaining like anything. We don't have the time to organise these players. And that's how football is at the moment. The players are truly organised. And Kenny Dalglish, one of the greatest Premier League managers ever, and probably forever, just used to do five-a-sides.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't. Some of his great years were before the Premier League as well. He bestrode the old First Division into the Premier League. But I know what you're saying. And that in those days, everybody knew the team. There was no need to do patterns of play. They knew the pattern of play. They knew what their jobs were. And that's one of the things now that you find. I've been non-league football where people come out of clubs and they don't know their jobs. They're not taught that anymore. They're not taught their basic jobs, what to cover, where. Then they're taught talent, skill and passing and all that, and technique. But now, if you're playing a game on a Saturday, the team might be 5 players different to, and Maresca makes the most changes, to what it was last week. So there is no continuity. So you have to prepare specifically for that game. And there's so much data given about the opposition that the managers believe they have to assimilate all that and to justify having a data department and put that data into play. That's why managers, Maresca, to his credit, found a game. James Collins, as the under-21 coach, took charge of Wolves against Chelsea. Maresca found a game where Wolves under-21s played Chelsea under-21s to see what tactics Collins would employ.
And Wolves won that game 4-0, by the way.
Well, that's why he did it.
Under-21s playoff.
Some would say that's really stretching the point about doing it. But he believes, and that's the way that people manage now, that you have to. I mean, some managers say, well, just send me the 5 bullet points for what you've found from the data that we need to know. That will simplify my job. But I'm a bit like that as a commentator. I want to go back and see as much. I have to say, I didn't find that match to go and watch it, but maybe I should have done. I don't know. I think the continuity was there. Continuity doesn't exist in football now. It's just about the next game, and therefore they have to prepare thoroughly for it. So your point is a valid one, but it's partly because of the amount that there isn't. You'd probably go, I get 7 out of 11 of the best team at each 20 of the 20 Premier League. But there are so many options and alternatives now. So we're going to play this way because we're playing against them. Well, hang on, we're just going to turn up and say, well, you play tonight, you're going to play right wing back tonight, not right back. Now that should be enough, really. But it doesn't seem to be. The obsession with detail leads to a very valid point that you're making. And of course, you could probably fiddle some withdrawals in the past. Now they have to go.
Yeah.
And they have to go. And so if the players got to go to the national team, then you might as well let them handle him and decide whether he can play or not.
And this brings me back to what we were talking about before with the problems of Eddie Howe, who in the last Champions League campaign, Newcastle struggled domestically. And Antonio Conte, you can go right back through his career, and he's always been a more successful domestic manager than European manager, and he's always been most successful domestically when he hasn't had Europe to contend with.
Yeah, no.
And now these international breaks just make it that much harder.
I would say, Neil, that you would know much better than me, but I don't think he changed his team as much as some managers. So he knew...
Conte, yeah. I agree.
If you're playing left-sided centre-back in a back three for Conte, all you'll get in preparation is that you'll have a little bit of pattern of play, and then he'll go, you've got to go 3 inches to the left because you're not quite in the proper position, and that kind of detail. So preparation is far more diligent, and players hate meetings, but there are meetings and talks, and sometimes when managers that lose the dressing room, as they say, it's because they're over fussy with all these things. And there's only
Shall I tell you a story?
I think you're going to.
I'd completely forgotten this. Rafa Benitez, in his meetings, he had very long meetings.
Yes.
And all through his career, he's had very long meetings. But he treated the meetings in a different way to other managers. This is what I've been told. And one of the things that he did that the players, I have heard, were never comfortable with was he treated them like a school teacher. So he'd say something and then ask a question and look for someone to put their hand up and give an answer, which is unheard of in football team meetings, because it's you will do this, you will do that, they will do this, they will do that, get out and get on with it. But no, he actually sought participation from his students, and it wasn't welcomed at all.
No, but there is sometimes, we mentioned in the last podcast about Gateshead turning up late to AFC Wimbledon, winning the game, throwing all that prep out the window. We just got to get changed and go out and do our best and be footballers and put into practice what we've been sort of picking up through the season to get to this game in the autumn. So I can remember going with Alan Dowson, the manager, with Kingstonian to Boreham Wood, who were a good non-league team. And we got there, I think we had 20 minutes to get changed. We won 1-0. So it just, you can't, there's no logic to it sometimes, but obviously the percentages are with the data-driven team talks and the time spent on the training ground.
There you go. We are going to have very quickly, I haven't even warned Martin of this, stoppage time.
Stoppage time.
How many minutes are on the board, please?
Very few. This is going to be a very quick stoppage time. There was a press conference at Cobham before Chelsea went to Baku to play Karabakh. And it was broadcast. I watched it afterwards. And the last question was given to one Martin Tyler. And your question was whether or not Chelsea were going to stay on UK time when they were out there. And the manager confirmed that they were, and that was the end of it. There was then, after Chelsea's not very particularly good display out there, a lot of questions about the arrangements of the trip. And there was a lot of stories about Chelsea getting out there at 1 a.m. Well, they did get out there at 1 a.m. Azerbaijani time, but that was 9 p.m. UK time. So it wasn't really a story given on the back of what you had drawn out of the manager
when I
beforehand.
commentated on the game, I said, as far as Chelsea are concerned, this is 5:45.
Yeah, but it was 9:45.
And it's 10:45 in Azerbaijan.
Yeah. But my point in all this was, I remember going to a pre-season tournament in Kuala Lumpur. I think it was the year that Roman bought Chelsea, 2003.
It was the first Asia trophy.
The first Asia trophy, yeah. And we were out there for a week, and you stayed on UK time for that whole week.
I wasn't out there for a week, but I did, and every Asia trophy I went to.
Because you only had, you must have 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, probably 5 maybe. But every Asia trophy I went to, I lived on English time,
So
I didn't see why not. I mean, it was a bit odd.
But Malaysia it was about 8 hours, 9 hours difference.
It might have been. I managed it. I got home and I was ready to go. Then I wanted to be fresh when I came back. So I think travel is a wonderful thing, but it does have its consequences. So you do your best to minimise the difficulties. So what are you saying, that I should have not lived on?
No, what
UK
I'm saying is that I actually find it impossible to stay on UK time when I'm abroad because of daylight, night time.
You go down the pub, whereas I'm sitting over my laptop trying to glean some stats that I can illuminate the world with.
Yeah, but I'd probably take my laptop down the pub and tell everybody what they should be thinking about the game.
You can multitask, Neil. I can't multitask like you. So.
And to the restaurants, of course.
But it always worked, so and I would never change it. But I'm going to the USA. I've heard since the last podcast. I'm grateful for an offer to go, but I won't do 4 weeks on. I will adjust my clock.
I find it hard not to, because it's just natural to me with the.
But your work is any time of the day. My work is geared to the match time. Everything that I do is geared to the match.
And can the players do that? Do you think they can actually do that and stay on UK time?
Well, for the trip to Baku, yes. But I doubt if they stayed on UK time going to Kuala Lumpur. I wouldn't have thought so. But it's just a personal thing, because I wanted to be right for the kickoff time, as Chelsea wanted to be right for the kickoff time in Baku. And I thought, I know because you're one of these entitled fans of a big club, I thought it was a very good game. It was a very exciting game that Baku, the Karabakh in Baku, gave a really good account of themselves, pushed Chelsea all the way.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, and it was a very enthralling game to commentate on. So, he wants to win, Maresca. It's no great hardship. They're both on 7 points, aren't they? They look like they should be drawing over the way the table started.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I was just.
You disagree with my peccadillo.
I just no.
It's taken you 85 episodes to put me under that particular bus.
Yeah,
anyway,
I've got to say, if you stayed on UK time, you'd be finding yourself having your first glass of red at 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that.
Which is what you normally do anyway. So, right. The referee's blown the final whistle now.
Yeah,
we added on time.
This is The Joy of Football. Thank you for watching. From Martin and me.
See you next time.
Right, that's it. We're an hour and a bit into this podcast, and but Martin's on a different time, so he is only 13 minutes into it and feeling full of life and ready to go and energy, and he's going to get everything right the moment he walks out the door.
I hope.